You could go just about anywhere in the world and find someone to tell you their local urban legend. Sometimes it's a monstrous creature that lurks in the shadows just out of view waiting for its next victim. Other times it's the ghost of a person who met a tragic end, or even a mongoose named Jeff that talks within the walls of a family home. But there are rare times when a friend tells a friend who tells a friend a story that starts as something very real and like a game of telephone becomes something else entirely. Imagine you've just enjoyed a first date and you're on your way to drop them off at their Pennsylvania home. You round a bend on Route 351 and spot something strange in the distance. It appears to be a dim green light at the edge of the opposite lane. As you drive closer, you realize the glow is somehow coming from a man walking down the road. 1 foot on the asphalt and 1 foot on the gravel shoulder. Your headlights illuminate his face, or at least where his face should be. But there are no eyes and no nose. You look in the mirror in disbelief of what you two have just seen, only for the light to disappear into the bushes that line the road. Now what if I told you that story was completely real? Sort of. That's where this legend, and other legends like it, take a strange turn. Raymond Robinson was a typical child of his time. In between going to school and doing his chores, he liked to play with his friends and go swimming. It's not entirely clear how Raymond came to be climbing an electrical pole on the day that would change his life forever. But we do know that the 8-year-old was reaching for a bird's nest before thousands of volts raced through him. This very same line had taken the life of another child named Robert Littell just a year prior. But against all odds and even the doctor's beliefs, Raymond did not become the second victim. He survived. But it wasn't without a cost. He lost his eyes, his nose, his right arm, and his future. As he grew up, he kept to himself, passing the days by spending time with his family and making extra cash for the household by making doormats, wallets, and belts. To get out of the house and feel a sense of freedom and normalcy, he began going on long walks in the middle of the night, feeling his way down the road using a walking stick, and keeping 1 foot on the road and 1 on the gravel. It didn't take long before people began to see him. His legend grew quickly. Someone would see a man with a disfigured face walking down the road, and by the time the story was repeated, he became a man that fell into a vat of acid who now glowed a terrifying green color. Curious teenagers began to seek him out, but he would hide in the bushes to avoid contact with people. In time, though, he would grow more comfortable with the kids, some of whom even considered him a friend. They would bring him alcohol and cigarettes and just chat with him about mundane things like the weather. Some of these relationships were so strong that during the Vietnam War, a local named Ann Steele wrote to soldiers who would write back asking how Raymond was doing. But this began to worry those closest to Raymond. One time he got so drunk that he never made it home. Instead, he got lost and spent hours in the woods before crawling back to the road in the morning using sounds of traffic, before finally being found by his family. The attention eventually grew to a point that people would pull up to their house at all hours honking their horns, wanting to see the man that became the legend known as Charlie No-Face. One year the carnival was in town and one of the owners came knocking on the Robinsons' door with a strange request, wanting to hire Raymond to work for their freak show. His nephew later said he was lucky to get out of there alive, and that he nearly came to blows with others on multiple occasions. The bad actors didn't stop at gawking or lacking boundaries, though. Some even hit Raymond with their cars as he walked multiple times, or picked him up just to leave him in unfamiliar areas. But as sightings of Charlie No-Face spread across the state and the legend grew larger than the truth, Raymond continued his walks no matter what. So much of his life had been taken from him by the accident, he was never going to give up the walks that made him feel so free. His nephew later said he never discussed his injuries or his problems at all. It was just a reality, and there was nothing he could do about it. So he never spoke about it. He never complained about anything. Raymond Robinson was beloved by his family. He loved listening to the radio. He was a normal man who just happened to have been in an accident as a child. But that accident never truly defined who he was, except to those that saw him taking his walks. He unfortunately became a local novelty that evolved into an urban legend. Raymond Robinson died in 1985 and was buried in Grandview Cemetery, which is the same place that Robert Littell was laid to rest 67 years earlier. But that hasn't stopped locals from going on late-night excursions hoping to get a glimpse of Charlie No-Face to this day. Halfway around the world near a small village in Switzerland, there once was a mysterious figure that was said to stalk the forest nearby. Wearing a boiler suit, a cloak, and a gas mask that covered his very tall frame entirely, sightings began sometime in the late 90s. Over the years, numerous people reported encounters with the ghost of Maules. The police sought him out, but he had never done anything illegal. An official was quoted saying, "The situation is delicate because we basically have nothing against this person." In all the encounters, he was never aggressive, but people still feared him because he was different. In September of 2013, a photograph was published in the paper claiming to be the first reliable proof of his existence. A few short months later, hikers walking through the woods came across his clothes and his mask with a note lying nearby. He wrote that he was aware of the photograph's publication. He decried the fact that people feared him but did not fear the real horrors of the world around him. He felt that the newfound attention brought on him was an attempt to eradicate him because he was different. He somberly ended the note by saying, "The phantom disappears. The risk of a beast hunt is great. It will come back to haunt the narrow minds of your kind, for ultimately a ghost never dies." Many read the note as a way to say goodbye before he ended his life. Others theorized that he simply moved on to somewhere else. Some even postulated that it was a hoax the entire time. But since then, there have been no confirmed sightings of the ghost of Maules. These two stories are not isolated cases. Whether it's a life-altering accident or just a person living an alternate lifestyle in the woods, throughout history you can find stories of people that became monsters in the eyes of others. These men and others like them never asked to become urban legends. Their stories spread and change over time, eventually leaving the truth behind. Full lives of real humans become myths. A loving sibling and uncle named Raymond Robinson became a monster called Charlie No-Face. Next time you're sitting around a campfire trying to scare your friends, or even listening to your favorite true crime podcast, take a moment to reflect on the lives led by the real people behind the stories.